Hello guys, Dylan Cologne here from PhotoThink, and today we're going to be talking about manual selections. In the previous tutorial, we talked about some of the more simple selections in the rectangular marquee tool and the elliptical marquee tool, where we simply defined shapes and told Photoshop to use that as our selection point. Now in manual selections, we're going to get into kind of creating our own shapes to define our own selections. We ended the tutorial on the polygonal lasso tool, so I might as well jump right into that real quickly. To create a selection with the polygonal lasso tool, we're just going to click, click, and click until we get our selection completed. Then you're going to left click to create your selection. I'm going to deselect that, and we're going to go into the lasso tool. The lasso tool is kind of a more freehand approach to selections. You're just holding down left click and dragging to kind of paint a selection into place. Now, the lasso tool can be a little inaccurate, and it's really meant for some of those more messy selections when you have to, let's say, select a cloud in the sky, or for things like creating fast selections around objects that you really don't need accurate selections around. The polygonal lasso can be pretty accurate, but it can get slightly infuriating when you make a mistake, and you can't really go back and fix it because the selection has already defined its point. Now, the solution to all of these things lies in a tool laying at the bottom of the toolbar. This tool isn't inherently just for selections. In fact, it has a whole wide range of uses, but for this tutorial, we're going to be talking about it in terms of selections, and that is the pen tool. Now, this little guy can get a little confusing and has a whole bunch of quirks that affect its behavior, but we're just going to talk about as much as we can in regards to selections. So it works in kind of the same principle as the polygonal selection tool. We're dropping a point, and then clicking to create another point, and that creates a line. Do keep in mind, this line is not part of a selection yet. This is actually what's called a path, and the pen tool creates paths to create vector shapes, or we could use it to define a selection, which for us is pretty great. The nice thing about the pen tool is that it's fairly straightforward and very easy to edit. You're going to see right here, I'm going to create a curve. With the polygonal lasso tool, we'd be out of luck because we're just creating straight lines. So with the pen tool, we can simply click and drag to create a curve. You're going to see these two anchor points pop up, and that's what's defining our curve. Now, we only want this bottom anchor point. Because this top anchor point exists, if I was to create a line right here, you're going to see it curve outwards. That's because this anchor point is telling Photoshop to curve the next line in our paths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that, alt-click that little point, and now what's happening is we just deleted that upper anchor point, and we only have the previous anchor point. Now I can create a straight line perfectly fine. I'm going to keep clicking here, and I'm just going to make a mistake on purpose by clicking up here. Uh-oh. Now with the polygonal lasso tool, we'd be out of luck. That point is now there forever, and we have to complete our selection and then mask it out later. However, with the pen tool, since we're working with a path, we can simply select that vertex point, and then drag it down to the area we want to be at. Then with the pen tool, we're just going to reselect that point and continue making our selection. Now I'm going to do this selection fairly quickly so it won't be that accurate, but you get the idea. For more advanced selections using the pen tool, you get up close and you start defining very accurate selections. It is a little intensive. You will be spending a lot of time with the pen tool kind of just fleshing out your selections, and they do take a very long time for some of the more advanced models. However, if you really want to create an accurate selection manually, the pen tool is your go-to tool. Now, as I said before, this is not a selection yet. It's simply a path. And the path can be used to define a shape, but we want Photoshop to turn it into the selection. How do we do that? Well, with the pen tool selected, you're going to right-click inside of your path and hit Make Selection. These settings I'm all going to keep at default, and I'm going to hit OK. And there is our selection. So I'm going to deselect that, and let's go over some of the things I just talked about. The lasso tool is for quickly painting selections onto the canvas. Not very accurate, but gets the job done. The polygonal lasso tool is for kind of dropping selections down point by point fairly quickly, but still pretty inaccurate. Now the pen tool is for those advanced selections where we can edit our selection as we're going through it using the direct selection tool. If we want to go back to the point that we were previously on, we have to click that point again with the pen tool and start going back. If we don't, and I simply move this point and then go to the pen tool, I'm going to start creating a new path. So it's very important that you select this point after editing it with the direct selection tool. That is everything you have to know right now about manual selections. Like I said, these tutorials are very simple. We're not going to be going into exactly what we're going to be using these selections for yet, because we haven't talked about layers. That comes up in the next series. However, it's really important that you play around with these selection tools and really get to know them. Try creating some more advanced selections around things like houses, cars, using the pen tool, and really understanding how to manipulate your points to make a very accurate selection. Once you have that down, jump into the next tutorial where we start talking about some of those automatic selection tools. Thank you so much for watching. This is Dylan Cologne. Next tutorial is coming up soon.